Welkom bij de leiderschapspodcast van City Life Church. Dit is Leadership Talks.
Hallo opnieuw bij Leadership Talks. Leuk dat je kijkt of luistert. Zoals je weet, elke vierde dinsdag van de maand heb ik een gast bij me waar we praten over leiderschap. I'll switch into English because our guest today is from the UK, United Kingdom, which used to be part of us, Europe. Her name is Betsy de Thierry. You live in Bath. Welcome, Betsy.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great to have you with us.
Yeah.
Now, as the people know, I always start with this question. Leadership. This is Leadership Talks. 22 minutes around about leadership, helping leaders in their role. Leadership is the problem, and leadership is the answer. Can you respond to that a bit?
I could probably write a book on that. But in one line, I would say, yes, absolutely, leadership is the answer because we can actually change culture. We can change entire cultures of cities, of nations. But also leadership can be the problem because if we don't recognize that that starts from a motivation of love and servanthood, then leadership can destroy. Leadership can hurt people. That would be my short version.
Yeah. Well, can you introduce yourself a little bit? Because I know a bit of who you are. It's quite amazing what you do. You do a lot of things. So tell us a little bit. Who is Betsy?
Well, Betsy de Thierry is married to Andrew. We have 4 sons who are 24, 22, 19 and 13. I was born in Burundi in Africa. So that's on my passport. I'm actually African.
You don't really look like
I know, and that's a wound. It's a wound. And I am a trauma psychotherapist and a pastor. And I'm the senior pastor. And I've started quite a few churches on my own before I got married, since I got married. And what else do? I run 7 organisations currently, all of which I've started myself. I don't mean to. I try not to. I keep promising my team I won't start another, and they just pop out of me. And you
work as an advisor?
Yes, I'm a consultant or an advisor for quite a few different governments. Around trauma and around trauma recovery. I do lots of consultancy, lots of meetings. I'm in the House of Parliament a lot. I have to travel a lot. I'm working in 24 nations at the moment, helping various different government and non-government agencies understand the impact of trauma.
That's big. It's a big life.
Yeah.
And you wrote 10 books.
I have written 10 books. Yeah.
10 books, and 2 more are on their way.
3 more are going to come soon, yeah. When I found time, I take myself away.
Well, by now everyone who's watching or listening is like, where do you find the time to do all this?
Yeah, I don't know either, but I do, and I love it. And I employ a lot of people in a lot of organizations, and they are amazing people that I'm privileged to do life with.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you are the senior pastor of a beautiful church in Bath, England.
Yeah.
But you're specialized a bit, can I say so, in trauma. Most of your books deal about this. It's special to have you with us in the program because that's the first time I think somebody really like you that works with. Can you tell a bit about what's your passion? What is your drive to do all this?
Well, I am very excited still about trauma because when we can understand the simple fact that the devil comes to kill and destroy, Jesus comes to give us life in all its fullness. When we understand that and we understand that actually trauma comes and has the potential to destroy life, it has the potential to rob somebody of the blueprint of their life, of who God has called them to be. And when we understand how we can help restoration happen, how we can help someone recover from their trauma, we're able to work with Jesus to help them become who they were originally created to be and know life in all its fullness. How can you not get excited about that? I think it's beyond exciting, seeing lives transformed, seeing lives changed, and where you see the pressure and the arrows of the enemy on people's lives, and you see them being able to recover and know who they are, who God's called them to be.
Yeah, well, trauma is very big subject, all kind of forms. Do you work with all kind of sorts of forms of trauma?
I do. My passion is complex trauma. So I have a theory, which is a continuum on trauma, a line. So you have type 1 trauma, type 2 trauma, type 3 trauma. Type 1 trauma is a single incident, a one-off thing. Usually you have words. Usually you can talk about that.
Because everyone has those.
Everybody. Yeah. Everybody will
from
have
the
that.
Upbringing, maybe from the last few years, COVID, losing jobs, insecurity in the society we live in on the moment.
Absolutely.
We all have those, I guess.
Yeah. But with type 1 trauma, children will generally be able to talk to somebody they care about and say, you wouldn't believe it, this happened. This, my dog was poorly. I was in a car crash. My parents were arguing. And so because they can talk about it and there isn't shame or loyalty, they usually can recover from it. Okay. Type 2 trauma.
So that before we go too far, so the first talking about it is really important to heal up.
It is with type 1 trauma. Yeah.
Talking about it.
But currently, most churches and most interventions, most organizations would think that talking is the answer. It isn't. It is for type 1. But type 2 trauma is when your brain actually changes shape. Because in type 1, if you had a car crash, life is fine, life's okay, and then suddenly, poof, your brain and your nervous system adapt to cope with that sudden shock. But hopefully, if you've got people near you, you will recover from that, hopefully within 6 months. In type 2 trauma, you never know when you're going to be hurt again. So when it's different kind of abuse, when it's living in domestic abuse, when it's living in environments which are terrifying, your brain and your nervous system adapt to constantly be on alert. When's the next danger coming? And you don't ever come out of that. And that means if you said to somebody who's in a type 2 trauma, tell me, how are you feeling? They'd probably go, yeah, I'm all right. I'm fine. Because there aren't many words. How do you describe something that's constant and unrelenting and overwhelming? And then there's type 3 trauma. And type 3 trauma impacts every aspect of a person, but in such a way that they've learned to defend themselves. So they've got all these protective layers on them. So often with type 3 trauma, if we're working in kids club at church or with our youth, very often they're the ones that want to reject us before we might have enough power to reject them. They're the ones that are defensive and protective and hiding either behind, pretending to be someone else, or they're just very, don't come near me. They swear a lot. And very often in church culture, they can be seen as naughty. Actually, they're the most hurting. But they don't have words to say, the reason I'm behaving like this is because this is going on at home and I need help, but I don't know how to ask for help. And I don't want you to pity me and I don't want you to shout at me. Just understand, I can't always be in control of my reactions because I don't know where they're coming from either. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot, but you say it's a lot of information in a few minutes. So most of us are, if we can be of any help, is probably one. Right? The others, they need specialists. Is that okay? Is that my conclusion?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Yes.
So as a pastor or a business leader, or so, you can kind of maybe help. If you can be of any help, it would be the type 1.
Yeah, you can help a type 1 recover from trauma.
Yeah.
But you can create cultures for type 2 and type 3 people to feel like they're accepted, known and loved. And most cultures in most organizations or most communities actually end up, by mistake, they'd never want to, but by mistake, forcing people to feel like they have to look okay. They have to fit in. Their actions have to be acceptable. Yeah. And yet when you're in type 2 or 3 trauma, because of what's happened to you, which you weren't in control over, you now have reactions from your emotions, from your body, from your thinking, from relationships get muddled. And usually a child, a young person or an adult is confused themselves and they feel embarrassed themselves. So when we create a culture where we understand, we're not accepting behavior that's hurtful to others, of course we're not, but we're creating a culture when somebody makes a mistake, when somebody runs out, when a child gets into a fight with somebody else, if somebody breaks down in tears, if somebody has a reaction that maybe they're surprised about too, our response to that has to be one where we say we understand. Humans are complicated, aren't they? Being a human is tough. Wow, you guys, you've gone through. Yes. And when we are intentional about setting cultures where we celebrate our humanity, rather than we have to pretend to be something that maybe we're not, then people begin to feel loved, accepted. They begin to feel like they can be who God created them to be. They can be authentic. And then they begin to hear from God who God says they are. And they begin to learn to receive love, which when you're in type 3 trauma, you can't receive love because you assume that love comes with a price. If I'm type 3 traumatized and you're trying to be nice to me, I'll assume that you want something from me. So that it doesn't work. So it has to be within the culture. Everybody understands that when behavior happens, it has a root, and we're going to love people, we're going to accept people, we're going to welcome people with all their mess.
And how you're pastoring a church in Bath, many hundreds of people. How does that? There's many pastors and leaders, connect leaders, team leaders. We all work with volunteers. So all kind of people, all kind of stories come walk into our church. How do you make that practical for for a church?
Okay, couple
because
of things.
many of us will kind of feel very overwhelmed, like I feel very inadequate. What can I do? So if you would talk to church leaders, but also to connect leaders, team leaders, well, just church people, come on Sunday, build a few friendships. What can we do?
The quickest, most profound thing that helps everybody is learn to be really good at empathy. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is looking at you at a distance and going, "Ooh, glad that wasn't me. That looks awful." Empathy is connection. Empathy is saying, I don't understand. I can't fix it, but man, I feel that. That's tough. Is there anything I can do? Like, that feels like it's so big. When somebody feels like you're trying to stand in their shoes just a little bit, that connection enables them to feel like they're important. And then the second thing is being listened to. That there seems to be the need that everyone's so busy, everyone's traumatized, everybody's anxious, everyone's carrying so much. We need to make space and be really intentional about listening. and allowing silences. Because it's only when we allow the silences would some people that have experienced rejection and experienced that sense of never being good enough and experienced not fitting in, it's in those little minutes of silence that they'll actually be able to voice some of their hurts.
Yeah.
And our job is not to fix it, but we can lead them to Jesus, and we can introduce them to the healer, the counselor, the Prince of Peace, who is in the business of, if he knitted us together, I have 4 sons that God knitted them together. I did not say one day, let me make an eyeball. That's amazing, right? Yeah. I didn't do that. I wasn't in control of them being created. God knitted them together in my womb. Yeah. He can re-knit. He can put us back together. He can re-knit those parts of our life that have got bruised and hurt. And when we've gone on the journey as leaders of allowing God into our hurt and allowing God into our disappointment, into the ways that we're coping with our anxiety, because maybe we're ashamed about being anxious. Maybe we feel like we're not being a strong enough leader, and so we're trying to not feel anxious. We're trying not to be disappointed with God, because after all, we're pastors, right? Yeah. We're trying not to be angry with God, and so we're pushing it down, and in that, actually, we get hurt. But when we can learn to take it to God without shame and go, help, I'm cross with you. Why did that have to happen? That does not feel fair, God. Why did they die? Just like David in the Psalms, it's that raw, like, ow, ow, ow. And then God can re-knit us. He can heal us. He can put us back together on the inside. And when we've had that happen to ourselves all the time, it never stops. I say to all my team, in all my organisations, all the time, you never take your L plates off. Do you have L plates? When you're a learner driver.
Yeah, a lesson.
You never take them off. Not down on earth. We've all got them on forever because we're always learning something.
Learning.
And
keep on learning.
Once we've gone on the journey of allowing God into our mess, then we can help others. So we're empathetic, we listen, and we point them to Jesus.
Do you in your church, do you have like, so we say connect groups is the heartbeat of church, right? You have the celebration on Sunday, and then the community side in the small groups. Do you have special groups that talk about this, or would you, as a pastor, no, I try to, let this happen everywhere, these talks, these honest...
No, we wouldn't want those kind of... it's in real life on a Sunday morning, that's when it happens. If we're in a small group in the week, the problem is that one person might want to dominate that group with their story and be listened to the whole night. And then we don't get discipleship done. We don't get, not everyone can be listened to. So we keep that bit short, but we have extra groups. So for example, we've just got a parenting group for those parents who feel so overwhelmed with stress because their children are behaving in ways that they can't cope with at all. So we've just started that, and we've got about 10 parents and people that have gone on the journey of learning some of what's in my books actually around attachment and helping children self-regulate and cope by co-regulation. They've learnt it. They're now teaching another group of people. So we have lots of specialist groups.
One other question, talk about trauma, 2 years of COVID. Now, as we are talking, the war in Ukraine and all the insecurity that brings also to Europe, the gas price, the financial situation, where is this heading up to? Would you call that a trauma? Is there the beginning of a trauma for many people? What's the good word? The insecurities,
I would call it a collective trauma. Guess what? I have another continuum, another line. You see, for some people, COVID is a trauma, but for children whose adults that look after them have got enough capacity, actually, it hasn't been that bad. actually it's been quite fun. They've had more time at home. They've had more films. They've had, it's been okay.
Yeah. For the children.
Yeah, for some of the kids and for some of the adults.
Yeah.
I think some of the adults, for the first time, I think for some people they felt less pressure. And I think for some people they've enjoyed the lack of structure. For some people. But anybody who's experienced any past traumas where they felt terrified, powerless and overwhelmed before, very often what's happened with the pandemic is it's triggered all of their previous feelings of feeling terrified. And so they've been somehow overwhelmed with the feeling terrified and powerless of who's going to die, am I going to die, how do I manage to earn a living, what's going to happen next, at the same time as they've had all these rumbling feelings coming up of, and when I was 5 that happened and I haven't really recovered. And so it's all coming up at the same time.
The unsafety.
Yeah. But I've written a whole book called The Simple Guide to Collective Trauma, to try and explain the things that we can do, because there is a possibility that actually we can turn things to be post-traumatic growth. And I don't say that cheaply. I really don't say that cheaply, but I do believe it. I do believe that post-traumatic growth is possible rather than post-traumatic stress. And there are tools that God has given us and that we understand from our neurobiology that enables us to go through traumas and come out the other side with more awareness of ourselves, more awareness of God, more awareness of his provision and his care and his protection, more awareness of who in our world loves us and who we love, more awareness of our frailty and our dependence on God. That it can be incredible. And I'm saying that having had death threats, stillbirth twins, I've had to move 20 times, I live in hiding, I've had so many traumas, you wouldn't believe it. But I'm still passionate about the fact that actually God can use everything. He can use everything. You look at the story of Joseph, you look at the story of anybody.
Well, we know the scripture, he uses everything for the good for those that love him and are called by his name. But do you really, that's a big one for people with trauma. Yes,
but never say it to somebody. You can say it to yourself, but you would never say it to somebody.
But that's a big one. It can be very, very confronting. How can God use this for my good? I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times.
Yeah, but he can. But only when we've had the courage to go through. It says in Psalm 23, so beautiful. How do you have dinner in front of your enemies? Right?
Why in front of my enemies?
Right,
I wanted that.
I never used to have enemies. I now have enemies. I don't want to have dinner in front of them.
No.
But when God puts confidence in you for who you are and who he says you are, you can have dinner in front of your enemies because he's the shepherd that walks through the valley of the shadow of death. We're not camping. We're not staying there. We're not staring at our wounds and feeling sorry for ourselves. We'll keep walking. And if we keep walking, we'll get to the other side with a story to tell that will be a testimony to set others free.
Beautiful. That is exciting. I can tell after all you've been going through. Well, thank you, Betsy. Our time has gone already. It's great to talk to you, and we feel the passion and your journey was not easy. You just mentioned a few things, and we are like really death threats and all. So thank you for coming. We are starting a women's conference now in City Life Church. So if people want to hear more, als je wat meer wil horen, if you want to know more about her teaching, she's going to speak, I think, how many times? The whole weekend, five, lots of times. And you have 10 books, so that's, if you want to hear more about this, her wisdom, that's possible. Thank you for watching us. We will be there again every 4th Tuesday of the month. Elke 4e dinsdag van de maand zit ik met iemand van leiderschap om te praten over leiderschap. Dankjewel voor kijken of luisteren. Geef het door aan je vrienden. Laat ons weten als je het waardeert wat we doen. Spread the news. En tot de volgende keer. 24 minuten. Nou, dat is oké.